In the land of the Nile, where gods shaped kings, one ruler would rise to defy every expectation. Here in Thebes, the beating heart of Egypt, power flowed like the river itself, endless,
Sacred, unquestioned.
Each morning, Thebes awakened in a symphony of labor and devotion, its people bound to the rhythms of gods and kings.
But her likeness would later be shattered, her name violently scraped from eternity, as though she had never ruled at all. The winds of centuries carried away the remnants of her story, burying her legacy beneath silence and sand. From the palace heights, she watched her kingdom awaken, unaware that destiny would call her to reshape its future. Her name was Hatshepsut, born a princess of Egypt, destined for far more than the world expected of her. Yet from the shadows of obscurity, her presence still rises, unbowed, unmistakable, eternal. Amid these cliffs, the kings of Egypt slept for eternity, and soon, her own story would join theirs. As each dawn broke over Thebes, the temples breathed with life, welcoming the sun god who ruled above all.
To understand her rise, we must turn back the scroll of time to the very beginning of her royal bloodline. For she was born of royal blood, daughter of a warrior king and a queen whose lineage reached deep into Egypt's sacred past.
Even in childhood, Hatshepsut watched the rituals of power with a focus far beyond her years.
She learned the sacred tales of the gods, stories that would one day shield her rise to the throne.
Tutors trained her in writing, language, and diplomacy, the tools of pharaohs and statesmen. In the palace gardens, she ran free. Yet even in play, her bearing hinted at the ruler she would become.
She watched the priests honor the gods, absorbing every gesture, learning how faith shaped the power of kings.
Her father, Thutmose I, warrior, conqueror, king, returned from battle crowned with glory. He saw in her a spark, an uncommon strength, and showed her the symbol of kingship few were ever meant to touch.
Under the watchful eyes of the priests, she learned the rituals that bound pharaohs to the gods.
As she grew, so too did her presence, poised, confident, unmistakably destined for more than tradition allowed.
As seasons passed, the young royal stepped into new expectations, no longer a child, but preparing for the weight of destiny.
As tradition required, she was prepared for marriage, a union meant to secure the strength of her father's dynasty. Led by musicians and maidens, she walked the path laid before her, one shaped by duty, dynasty, and expectation.
In a solemn temple rite, she became great royal wife, queen of Upper and Lower Egypt.
At her husband or side, she proved herself a skilled and steady presence, quickly mastering the demands of queenship.
She advised the court with clarity and confidence, earning respect far beyond the expected role of a royal wife. From the palace walls, she watched the discipline of Egypt's armies, lessons in order and power that would shape her future. All Egypt waited for her to bear a son, an heir who would secure the future of the royal bloodline. Instead, she bore a daughter, Neferu, a child who would become her closest companion and greatest pride. In Neferu, she found joy and a bond that would shape both their destinies. But the young king's health faltered, his strength fading long before his reign could truly begin. A shadow of uncertainty crept through the palace, whispering of a crisis that would change Egypt forever. When Thutmose II breathed his last, Egypt was plunged into uncertainty, and the throne into peril. The heir to Egypt's throne was but a fragile infant, too young to rule, too weak to secure the kingdom. So Hatshepsut stepped forward, not merely as queen, but as regent, the steady hand Egypt desperately needed. Through sacred inscriptions, she asserted a divine lineage,
declaring that her right to rule was sanctioned by the gods. She strengthened her claim with a divine story, declaring that Amun himself had chosen her to rule Egypt.
As priests gathered at Karnak, a new chapter in Egypt's history approached, one that no woman had dared to claim. With priests and nobles at her side, Hatshepsut walked the sacred path toward a destiny no woman had ever claimed. Priests anointed her with sacred oils, marking the beginning of a coronation unlike any Egypt had ever witnessed. One by one, the symbols of kingship were brought before her, emblems long reserved for sons of the throne. And then, before the gathered priests and nobles, the Nemes crown was placed upon her head, marking her rebirth as king. She emerged not as queen nor regent, but as king, claiming the throne with the full regalia of a pharaoh. In a single deliberate act, she embraced the symbols of masculine kingship, adopting the false beard worn only by pharaohs. Before the people of Thebes, she proclaimed her rule, not as queen, but as pharaoh, chosen by the gods to lead Egypt.
Among the nobles, whispers began to rise, some uneasy, some intrigued, for Egypt had never seen a woman claim the double crown.
Across Thebes, the people murmured with astonishment, some doubtful, others hopeful, as news spread that a woman now sat upon the throne. To strengthen her authority, she commanded artisans to reshape royal imagery, casting her rule in the traditional form of a male king. At Karnak, the oracle of Amun affirmed her destiny, declaring before Egypt that the gods themselves favored her rule.
She adopted the full 5 names of a pharaoh, claiming every title and honor once reserved for Egypt's kings.
With the blessings of Amun's priests, her rule gained divine sanction, and opposition began to fade.
Officially, she ruled alongside the boy king Thutmose III, but all knew the true power rested with her.
As pharaoh, she ruled with precision, reviewing officials, issuing orders, and ensuring Egypt's vast machinery ran under her watchful eye. Under her rule, Egypt's wealth grew, its treasuries filled with gold, ivory, incense, and tribute from across the known world. She summoned Egypt's greatest architects, envisioning monuments that would eclipse those of kings before her.
Here, she conceived a masterpiece, Deir el-Bahri, a temple carved not against the cliffs, but rising as one with them.
Before these sacred cliffs, she imagined a temple unlike any Egypt had seen. A sanctuary carved from the very bones of the world. Thousands of workers labored beneath the desert sun, clearing the earth to make way for her vision.
Giant blocks of stone, some weighing many tons, were dragged across desert sands, a testament to the will behind her vision. Skilled artisans carved elegant columns and reliefs, shaping raw stone into a sanctuary worthy of divine worship and royal power. Terrace by terrace, her vision rose from the desert floor, an architectural marvel carved into the living cliffs. Artists adorned the walls with vibrant scenes, each stroke contributing to a monument that proclaimed her power for generations. From the quarries of Aswan, workers carved colossal obelisks, monoliths that would rise like spears of sunlight at Karnak. With sheer human strength, the great obelisks were dragged across the desert, monuments destined to proclaim her glory. The obelisks were guided onto great river barges, their journey to Karnak beginning upon the waters of the Nile. Down the Nile they sailed, vast stone giants, gliding like sacred monuments upon the water. At Karnak, the obelisks arrived to great ceremony, monuments meant to honor Amun and to proclaim the power of his chosen king. With flawless precision, the great obelisks were lifted skyward, raised by thousands of hands, guided by the will of their king. When completed, her obelisks towered above Karnak, glittering in the sun like rays of the god Amun himself. She ordered a grand expedition to the fabled land of Punt, beginning vast preparations along the banks of the Nile. Hatshepsut blessed the fleet herself, calling on the gods to guide Egypt's ships safely to the distant shores of Punt. With oars beating in unison, the fleet set out from Thebes, beginning a journey into lands spoken of only in legend. For days they sailed down the Nile,
toward Egypt's Red Sea port, carrying gifts, ambitions, and the will of their king. Through blistering desert heat, the crews hauled entire ships across the sands, defying distance and the limits of endurance.
At the shores of the Red Sea, the ships were rebuilt and strengthened, made ready for the long voyage to Punt.
At sunrise, the fleet set out across the Red Sea, carrying Egypt's hopes toward the distant and mysterious land of Punt. Through high winds and rising waves, the fleet pressed onward, its sailors determined to reach the legendary land beyond the sea.
After weeks at sea, the sailors beheld Punt, a land of incense trees, strange wonders, and long-awaited opportunity.
On the shores of Punt, the Egyptians were welcomed by its people, opening a chapter of diplomacy and prosperity. Myrrh trees, incense, gold, ivory, and exotic treasures flowed into Egyptian hands, goods that would enrich temples and transform her kingdom. The rulers of Punt welcomed the Egyptians with ceremony and gifts, affirming a bond of friendship between their distant lands. The ships were filled with treasures, myrrh trees, incense, ivory, and gifts, riches that would soon transform temples across Egypt. With gratitude and friendship, the two peoples parted, each enriched by the exchange, each changed by the encounter. With their ships filled and their mission complete, the expedition turned northward, carrying rare treasures back to Egypt.
For many days they crossed the open waters, guided by stars, winds, and the seafaring skill of Egypt's finest crews.
At last, the fleet reached Egypt's Red Sea port, its ships heavy with wealth, its sailors eager to return home. Across the desert they carried the treasures of Punt, rare gifts that would soon enrich Egypt's temples and its king. At the banks of the Nile, the precious cargo was loaded once more, its long return to Thebes nearly complete. Up the Nile they traveled once more, bearing gifts fit for temples and palaces, treasures that would define a reign. At last, the procession neared Thebes, its ships laden with wealth, its success soon to be celebrated by all Egypt. The people of Thebes gathered in great numbers, eager to witness the fleet's return and the wonders it carried. The treasures of Punt were carried ashore, gifts that would soon glorify temples and affirm the prosperity of the realm. In a grand procession, the gifts of Punt were carried toward Karnak, offerings that would honor the gods and exalt the throne. At Karnak, priests laid the treasures before the gods, gifts from distant lands offered in gratitude for a successful voyage. In stone and color, the story of the expedition was carved for eternity, an enduring record of Egypt's reach and ambition. She walked among the carved walls, seeing her achievements immortalized, her reign inscribed for generations yet to come.
Her temple at Deir el-Bahri rose in majestic terraces, an achievement of architecture, devotion, and power unparalleled in its age.
She entered her rising monument in full ceremony, a ruler at the height of her authority, honored by priests and people alike. Behold, the majesty of Egypt, eternal and unwavering, under the gaze of the gods.
Under her guidance, record keepers and officials strengthened the state, ensuring stability, abundance, and order throughout the land. In the halls of her court, she spoke with clarity and resolve, guiding policy, settling disputes, and directing the affairs of the kingdom. She oversaw the lifeblood of the land, its farms, its water, and its harvests, ensuring the prosperity that sustained her people. Workshops and markets thrived, trade expanded, artisans shaped a world of beauty,
each craft reflecting the strength of her flourishing reign.
Envoys from distant lands came bearing gifts, recognizing a powerful court and a ruler whose influence reached far beyond the Nile. Across the kingdom, construction flourished. Temples rose, monuments expanded, and her vision reshaped the very face of Egypt. She visited her building sites often, reviewing every detail, driving forward works that would define Egypt for centuries. Thebes flourished under her reign, its temples expanding, its markets thriving, its people living in an age of peace and abundance. Festival ceremonies honored her leadership,
uniting people and priesthood in celebration of a prosperous and harmonious reign. In rare moments of solitude, she looked inward, contemplating the weight of power and the legacy she hoped to leave behind. Yet beneath the calm of her long reign, rivalries stirred, whispers of ambition beginning to trouble the halls of power.
In her later years, she looked back on a reign of ambition and achievement, aware that time would judge what she had built.
Her monuments endured, great works of stone and imagination, standing bright beneath the sun long after her own time had passed. In the years after her rule, her images were struck from the stone, her name concealed beneath plaster, her memory reshaped by those who followed. Though her name was hidden and her memory challenged, the monuments of her reign endure, speaking across the ages of a ruler who shaped the destiny of Egypt.